Wanted to take a few moments and talk about some Ives history. You know, Ives had a lot of innovations like the reverse unit, but I think one of the overlooked things about Ives is they created this beautiful wide gauge or standard gauge steam locomotive casting. It's die cast, and they came up with it in 1928. In 1927, this number 1134 was cast iron, and it was shorter, and it was a 440 instead of a 442. Now this casting has been stripped of its paint and details. They haven't been put back on yet, and it's got an American Flyer motor, but it could go either way because it's the same casting. American Flyer was allowed to use the Ives casting, and also Dorfan did. Dorfan repainted this casting in their own colors. And then most recently, MTH has reproduced the casting, and here is one in a glossy black, but it's based off of the same casting that Ives came up with in 1928, the 1134 die cast shell, and it's really quite beautiful. I just like the lines of it. Even in the 80s, a company called Rich-Art reproduced these in brass, and this one has the high mount headlight. In fact, they all have the high mount headlight. This one's missing, and the one that we ran yesterday at Fritz's had the center boiler mount headlight. So let's take a look at a couple more clips of his running on his layout, pulling the Lionel Ives transition freight cars. Well, you probably thought the video was over, but here's a little bonus at the end. Fritz didn't know about this, but last night Fritz and I got to working on the motor. Came out of the steam locomotive that you just saw, and before we could make it run, Fritz cleaned the reverse unit. He cleaned the brushes. He did a great job on cleaning everything, but it still didn't run. And I wanted to show you the inside of an Ives motor that is nearly 100 years old. In standard gauge motors that we're most familiar with, the commutator and the field are all right in this central area. Well, on this Ives steam locomotive, the motor is shifted towards the back. And let me turn it around, and you can see that a number of gears take the power from the motor, transfer it to the front. It's pretty ingenious, but look at the bearings. There's ball bearings in all of the gears, including the armature. It's got ball bearings too. Here's the cover for the armature that holds, I've only got one of the brush tubes installed, but look at that, ball bearings. And this was 100 years ago. Well, what we determined was the armature had a break in it. And so we kind of stepped out on a limb and decided to rebuild the armature. We wound it up, put it back in, and found that we didn't wind it tight enough, and some of these wires they rubbed against some of the field coil and so forth. So this morning I took and rewound it, got a flatter wind, and then I took some shellac and coated the wires so that they wouldn't fly off during the middle of a run. And then I've got everything all soldered back together, and it's ready to be put in. So my next step is to install the armature, install the brush tubes and brushes, hook up all the wires, and hopefully it will run.